We're coming to you from the CoinDesk podcast studio presented by BitGo, founded in 2013 with the first institutional grade Bitcoin wallet. BitGo is the gold standard in custody, staking, and settlement. Today, BitGo supports over 800 coins and processes 20% of all Bitcoin transactions by value. Check them out at bitgo.com. Now, like I said, we're going to be here all day. We are joined by a ton of heavy hitters, and one of them joins us now, Litecoin Creator Charlie Lee. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, thanks for being here. Now, I'm going to ask you the same thing I asked Danny. What are you excited about for this consensus? What's different about this consensus when you think about the other ones that you've attended?
To be honest, I mean, every consensus is pretty crazy. I mean, I've been to a few, and they're kind of about the same craziness. It's been a while since I've been to a consensus. I think the last one was like 5 or 6 years ago.
Well, define crazy. When you say consensuses are pretty crazy.
It gets bigger and bigger every year. Mm-hmm. Like the first one is kind of a decent size, but now it's a huge event. It's pretty impressive.
Now, 5 or 6 years ago, where was Litecoin compared to today?
Litecoin over the past 5-6 years has gained a lot of adoption, a lot of usage. For example, on BitPay, one of the largest crypto payment processors, Litecoin has actually overtaken Bitcoin as the #1 used cryptocurrency for people paying with crypto. So that's kind of a surprising turn of event, but very, very promising.
It's been 5 years since you've been in the consensus, but you've been in this industry for a long time. I know that you spoke on one of the OG talks here at Consensus. Curious to just hear some of your war stories. You know, not everyone has been in this industry as long as you. Any particular story that you think folks who are watching can learn from, especially builders in this space?
I think the biggest pitfall with this space is people get in when the price is at the peak. It's because there's just so much news, everyone's talking about it, and people hear about Bitcoin. They buy in at the top, and then, as you know, Bitcoin is very volatile. It could drop like 80-90% in the year or even half a year, and when that happens, those people get wiped out. So they get in at a high and they sell at the low, and they're kind of like wiped out from the space. So what I've learned over the years is you just have to have strong hands, and you have to have conviction, and basically buy in slowly and be able to hold and not be wiped out by the volatility.
I'm going to call you Diamond Hands, Charlie.
Yep.
Now, Charlie, I'm curious to hear your perspective on the ETFs, right? We have a Bitcoin ETF. It looks like there's going to be an Ethereum ETF sometime soon. Is a Litecoin ETF something that you're hopeful for, and what would it take to get there?
In terms of regulatory concerns, I think Litecoin ETF is easy to get past because it's a commodity just like Bitcoin. It's more about demand. When there's more demand on people wanting to invest in Litecoin ETF, it will happen. I believe it's a matter of time, not if.
I'm curious what your thoughts are on the ETF. We spoke to some other OGs on this set yesterday, and the OGs are all about decentralization, right? That's what attracts people to the space. ETFs are attracting a new type of person to the space, but they really bring a centralized element. Curious, since you've been in the space for so long, where you see the pros and cons with the recent ETFs that everyone is talking about this year.
I honestly don't see any cons with it. I think Bitcoin is a new asset class. It's one of the best performing, or the best performing asset class ever. So an ETF just gives the ability for anyone to invest in Bitcoin. I think that's good for the space. In terms of decentralization, the best thing about Bitcoin is you always have an option to self-custody, move it on-chain, and take total control of your money. And that's always going to be the case, which is why Bitcoin is so powerful.
Now, Charlie, in walking around Consensus this year, I've seen a lot of people that, you know, I look at things like gaming companies and other things, and I don't always think these people are in it for the tech. Sometimes you hear these, they call them token generation events, these airdrops, and it might be a little bit less about the technology and the decentralization and more about the money-making opportunities. What's your perspective on the state of the industry right now?
I think it's always been the case. Most people are here for the money and not for the tech, and I think that's fine, right? That's that's what attracts people into this space. But the underlying kind of core strength of Bitcoin is the tech, and that's not going to go anywhere. But the money aspect is what attracts people to this space, and unfortunately, it's also what attracts a lot of scammers to this space.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's interesting you say the money aspect attracts people to the space. Do you think that the people who are attracted by the money are those fickle people, the people who we don't see coming back to consensus year after year, coming through the bear markets? They're here for a good time, but maybe not a long time?
Yeah, I would say that's true. Like every time I come to these big events or come to consensus, there are a lot of new people that are new to the space that are just here because of the money aspect, and then a few years later they disappear.
So how do we get people to stay, Charlie?
I mean, we don't need to try to get people to stay. I mean, they will stay if they believe in the space, and the community is growing like exponentially. So I'm not concerned about that.
And how will you make sure that the Litecoin community continues to grow? We're hear so much about the Bitcoin layer 2s these days and other ways of using this core technology in ways we just had not thought we could. Is that something that you hope for and to see in Litecoin?
For Litecoin, we're focused on Litecoin as a payment method, and that adoption of Litecoin as a payment has grown significantly over the past few years, and that's a really good sign. And kind of that's the main focus. In terms of the community growing, most people using Litecoin don't even know who I am, and that's a good thing, right? You don't need to know the creator of Litecoin to actually use it, because it's a very useful currency, and they use it because it's fast, the fees are low, and it's accepted everywhere, and that's the best thing about Litecoin.
Where are you seeing the biggest adoption of Litecoin? What regions are using it as a payment more than others?
I think more like third world countries are using cryptocurrency more because it's useful, right? In the U.S., people are adopting Bitcoin and Litecoin more for speculation than actually using it, and it's because it's not really needed. But in a country where their local currency is hyperinflating, storing their value into cryptocurrency is a lifesaver for them. So that's where I see the most adoption.
Do you think we're going to see more countries go the way of El Salvador and accepting or addressing Bitcoin and maybe even, I don't know, Litecoin as something more than just a cryptocurrency that exists outside of the state control?
Yeah, I think the next big thing with crypto would be nation-state adoption in terms of holding in their treasury, accepting it, actually legalizing it as a currency for the country. Right, and we're seeing that in El Salvador. We'll start to see more and more of that in other countries, I believe.
And what's next for Litecoin? I mean, you haven't been to a consensus in many years. What are you building? What are you looking forward to on your roadmap? Yeah,
currently we're working hard on a feature we launched recently. Well, recent as in the last 2 years. It's called MWeb. It's a privacy and fungibility feature. It's a kind of a layer on top of Litecoin where you can send transactions where no one else can see how much money you're sending. Only you and the recipient will know. And I think that's one feature that's missing from Bitcoin, which is a layer of fungibility and privacy that really helps protect you from spying eyes, right? When you spend money, you don't want anyone to know how much money you have in your bank account.
Charlie, thank you so much for joining us this morning. It's great to see you here at Consensus, and we hope you enjoy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. That was Litecoin Foundation Director Charlie Lee.